Meant to be motivating. God. People putting me under pressure. Time crunch. Oh shit. Oh shit. Listening to my own stream. Can't stand the sound of my own voice. Boom. Hello, it's me. I'm Andrew, and welcome to another Girl by Moonlight development session. On today's episode, we will be working on the unlikely hero. A very important archetype for this genre. Feels like it's going to be a complicated one. I have some notions for it, but nothing clear yet. As exemplified by this first move, Only Mortal, which states that you cannot have special armor and you cannot transcend. But then there's a bonus for this, and then later you can do a fictional trigger to change this for another move. And that's it. That's all I've come up with for that move. I don't know what kind of reward I should be giving the player, and I don't know what exactly my fictional trigger should be in order to make it change out. Yeah, sorry, Ninja Bread Man. Didn't mean to freak you out with the sudden appearance of my voice. A minute ahead of schedule. Very alarming. So, yeah, I have this kind of framework for a move. I know the restrictions I want to put on the player, but I'm not sure how, long of a pace we want to set on it. And I think this is, a required move, and then they can also take some optional ones. So, yeah, because I really like the idea of, because it's not just the hero, it's the unlikely hero. They gotta do some climbing. They gotta start restricted, limited, but be able to do fun stuff despite that. So it might be one of the harder ones to design, honestly. And then the second one, super easy. You can always ask a player what their character is really feeling. And I want to make all of the unlikely hero moves really, emotionally oriented. This playbook is the most, Moe-centric one. So they're all about, forgiving people and having feelings and talking about feelings and all the mushy stuff, or deep into the mushy stuff. And they might grow into being more, but this is what they get out the gate. So I think what I want to do is say, if you want to get moves that are about fighting and stuff like that, yes, Mira, I think I'll probably try to post them tonight. I think I have time tonight to sort through. It's just it's like filing paperwork, putting videos on YouTube from Twitch. It's just gotta get all your ducks in a row and copy pasta the right stuff in, and I'm very averse to doing that kind of thing. But I should get those out there. You're absolutely right. So I'll try to do that. I'll try to do that tonight. So yeah, by if you check Saturday, they'll definitely be up by then. So unlikely hero moves. All of the moves in this playbook need to reflect this initial state, right? They need to make sense in this initial state where we can't transform quite yet, and we can't have special armor. We're not about fighting. We don't get to have a lot of the cool tricks and bits and bobs that the other characters do until we satisfy this fictional trigger. And in the meantime, we get some kind of a bonus to do with friendship or something. Yeah, with this one, I don't know if I want to think of it as like a breaking point wipe away, but like we're kind of cooking in a like coming of age or like growth story in here. And yeah, for the sake of everyone's eyeballs, who does not have the enormous monitor that I have in front of me, let's zoom right in here. So this fictional trigger could be about character growth, and like what this fictional trigger is really does inform a great deal about the game's tone, about the character themselves, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if we make this a like you don't lose this until you like hit maximum stress and go into eclipse, like that could be a valid way to do it, right? And then it would be about this like fighty, like you need to suffer and then you like activate your awesome thing. We could make this about like friendship stuff still. We could like triple down on it. This could be about like everyone else being in a state of crisis, right? Or like other people letting you down and spotlighting the character, and then in that moment where only they can save other people, then the thing happens. There are lots of different ways that this could work, and I'm not certain how I want to go forward with it, which is why I've left it in this kind of like it's a description of what the move will later be. That's why I've John Harpered this move. Just imagine a move that does this thing. It's like the most this thing move that exists. So yeah, there are some like mechanics oriented ways that we could run this move about like taking a certain amount of stress or taking harm. There are or like number of advances or something could be one way to like pace them out. We could also do a sort of fictional, like in fiction trigger, where it's like when you do a certain thing. The fictional trigger might be a little more difficult to write, given how kind of broad it would need to be, because we don't know the specifics of the game that we're putting people into, or that they're going to make, with the tools we're providing. I think this bonus is probably going to be easier to define than the trigger, be it fictional or mechanical. I'm going to add in mechanical/fictional here because I think either one equally valid choices here. I'm not going to play favorites quite yet. I think I probably want it to be about like saving other people or other people needing to be saved. That would certainly be like my fictional trigger. When only you can save one of your friends from fatal harm or severe consequence. Right, like this seems like a very Steven Universe kind of vibe, right? Where, spoilers, Steven can make his shield only when it's like this last ditch thing to save everyone else, and he makes a big shield and saves everyone. And then that is kind of the like pivot for the character, although in Steven Universe they take it real slow, but the idea being that like, yeah, that gives us a pivot for the character where we can go start on this journey of becoming, rather than this like bumbling, unlikely character, one who can actually like do stuff. Another thing I might put in here is, or well, we can record it. Use, or well, yeah, use this advance only if you have triggered the you cannot take veteran advances until you, or well, if you still have only mortal. There we go. Easy peasy, right? So now we're saying until you can break out, you get access to these 5 moves, and you can like unlock transcendent stuff, but you can't use it yet because you can't transcend. Boom. Wipe. I'm super open to suggestions. I can't promise that I will incorporate all suggestions, but the whole point is to have a discussion and like sort things out. And what I have found is that often, like, it is equally helpful for someone to suggest something that's a great idea as it is for someone to suggest something where my reaction is like, no, absolutely not, because then I'm like, oh, that's something that I really like wouldn't want for the game, and I like to talk about why. Um, and this is all not to be like, oh, that person that suggested that is like an idiot, but it's just like if I have a strong reaction to something, be it positive or negative, that helps me define the space of the game, right? And like figuring out both what the game is and is not is super valuable, because then you carve away all the possibility and end up with this one thing. So that's the goal. Yeah, I don't want to make this playbook like too super special. Like, like we've got our outsider playbook that has its rival move, or it's like not really a move, but like that has like the rival thing about it, where you always have a rival. And we never want unique things like this from playbooks to completely overshadow all the other shit in the playbook, or to like overly constrain what you're able to do with it. So my thinking with Unlikely Hero is to have this special thing, Only Mortal, but have it be something that you could shed early on if you really wanted to. If you want to like exist in this space for a whole season or whatever, that's totally fine too. Which is why I don't want to link it to XP, because that is paced out on a session basis, right? We know how much XP we can possibly get at most if we like go super ham doing all of our stuff. We're gonna get, what is it, 8 XP at most. So if we tie it to XP, then the pacing is much more clear, but I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I want this to be more open to folks, because some people might want to like play this playbook but not necessarily be excited to occupy this Only Mortal space for a really long time. I don't want to make it trivial, but it should be impactful, but you can drop it right as it ceases to be interesting to you, And so in terms of moves that are then appropriate for this, right, like these can't be about fighting, these can't be about things that break this mold, so we don't have a special armor move for the mortal. They just don't have one. They can pull one from another playbook if they want to. And then this move, here's the other thing I was thinking of too, just to like never actually finish at one thought, is that Only Mortal could turn into a specific move, or you could just replace it with like a move from another playbook, or a move from this playbook of your choice. But it might be interesting to have a specific move that you swap out for, which constrains what this playbook is about quite a bit more than the others, where there's no required move. But so what I do like and do want to draw on is a lot of like Steven Universe stuff for this. But this stuff is all present in Sailor Moon in a slightly less explicit way, because even though she like becomes able to fight monsters as Sailor Moon very early on, she also is super bumbling and always needs help from her friends and is like, it's never just like that she just fights and wins, you know, straight up. It's always, there's always some extra added drama or tension around her being able to actually like handle it. And then in Steven Universe, like, I can't remember exactly how far I've seen into the show in terms of seasons, but I think I'm in like season 2 or 3. And you know, Steven isn't really like fighting things still, like well into there. He's the cheerleader for the team the whole time, which is an interesting role to fill. And so I want to make a lot of moves that are about that. Either that like making it easier for other people to bail you out of trouble, or giving you ways that you can indirectly support the people who are fighting and doing stuff. Because this is a game about like the power of friendship, so why not have characters who are about using their friendship as power, right? Yes, and we absolutely need to have a move about turning enemies into friends in this playbook. Although, like, that's probably going to come down to, you know, making the forgive roll at the right time. To, you know, crush your enemy with kindness in this game sometimes. So in terms of extra moves to add to this playbook, I definitely want to have a social link oriented move. So maybe one where like if people social link with you or if you social link with them, then there's like you get one more than you normally would. Maybe extra dice for the move, which I haven't quite got in a workable state yet. It's in another document. Or extra payout for it. So like every time they go and like hang out with someone, it generates 2 links instead of 1, or every time they go hang out with someone, it generates 1 link for each person instead of just 1 link for the other person, stuff like that. Make them better at being the like central character in that way, that they like connect the others and act as a hub of resources mechanically, that then means that in play that everyone's trying to be friends with them. So I think something like that could be good. And that move will crystallize once I finish some of the other work that I need to do for the game. Definitely want to have a move about like the like save me move, where other characters are at +1 die to resist consequences on your behalf. This one probably needs another clause, though. Because, yeah, we want, like, a cheerleading move, right? As well. This one and the save me move might, like, merge into one. But the idea being that, yeah, we don't fight directly, but we buff and support the team as they're fighting. And with that, we don't have to transcend in order to do it. We don't need to transform. I know a move. Spend links on your sheet to allow another character to transcend or activate a transcendent move. So just straight up, we can externalize our power into other people. Turning Daredevil on its head, so you mean like having a move where you're at -1 die to do desperate actions, but you get an extra die for resisting the consequences of desperate actions, like just a straight inversion of it. So a move about being cautious. If we were to have a move about being cautious, I think it would belong in one of the other playbooks, though, one of the more cold playbooks. I feel like this playbook is going to get driven to do desperate stuff more often. And then if we want to have a character be really like heroic, that kind of is necessary, that they take risks and that they be in high stakes situations. And I think it's kind of antithetical to Blades to discourage people from doing desperate actions. There are all kinds of things in the game that try to make you want to do that, right? Gypsy, I mean, yeah, we can kind of look at it that way. It's a playbook that has a lot of like support moves in it, because out the gate you only get to support people initially. But then we want to give it some punch down here because you're the freaking hero, right? So I'm thinking that when you do get access to your transcendent moves, they will be very strong. And that you get, some cool special paybacks for doing stuff, but also that they are powerful but highly situational, that like you only bust out you're like the big gun that only gets busted out in dicey emergency type situations. And yeah, definitely trying to pull some notions from like we can look at this as an inversion of the Mortal from Monster Hearts in some ways. And the Mortal is definitely the most interesting playbook in Monster Hearts, in my opinion. Where are all the skins in this thing? So, award-winning tabletop RPG Monster Hearts by Avery Alder, who is a cool lady, features a playbook called The Mortal. This is The Mortal right here, which is very much like a Twilight-inspired playbook, and it's super interesting because it is about codependence and externalization of power and of like exchanging. It has like a lot of mechanics around trading things. So I've cannibalized this already for some of the stuff with the rival move. So this may sound familiar if you remember that move, where we have the move True Love from the Mortal. So you always have exactly one lover. The first is chosen during your backstory. If you ever fall in love with someone else instead, give them a string and they become your new lover. You always carry one forward to earning your lover's heart or fancy. Cool. So pretty straightforward. Important thing to note is that in order for someone to be your lover, they have to have a string on you, which is to say that they immediately have power over you, and that is offered up. Also, that it is asymmetrical. They don't necessarily love you; you just love them, and thus you always carry one forward to earning your lover's heart or fancy. So there's an imbalance already out the gate, because this is Monster Hearts and it's about things being messed up. And then pretty much all the moves kind of connect into that in one way or another. So we have Mess With Me, Mess With Him. When you use your lover's name as a threat, add 2 to your roll to shut someone down or hold steady. Your lover gains a string on you. So again, it's about this like offering up of power to someone else in order to get stuff. When you ignore some blatant problem with your lover or how they treat you, mark experience. So encouraging a like gross codependent relationship, which is great. Every time you forgive someone for hurting you and excuse their base nature, take a string on them. So then this is where power starts coming back into the mortal's hand, right? Where they have to like suffer abuse in order to gain power over people. But also that unlike other characters, when they suffer abuse, it gives them power over other people. And then we have when you go poking your nose into affairs not meant for you, for your kind, someone involved in the situation gets a string on you and you mark experience. So a pretty straight, just like get XP for doing this thing that is kind of classically like a burning wheel type incentive, right? Of like you have a trait that's a negative trait, and if you play into it, or like in Muscard or whatever else, then you get some mechanical kickback. Entrenched. If you and another character have a total of 5 or more strings on one another, gain 1 to all rolls against them. And so this is strings on that strings they have on you and strings you have on them all added together. If that equals 5, then you're in the state where you get all these bonuses. So a delightful set of mechanics that all result in the creation of codependent relationships, right? Of like toxic, unhealthy, very in line with how adolescents engage in romantic relationships. It's brilliant game design. It's really, really, really good. I'm not sure what she has done with regards to the new edition, if any of these have changed. I currently only have the first edition of the game. And then lastly, you have a move for when you gaze into the abyss, you can cause yourself 1 harm, and if you do, add 2 to your roll. Classic teen angst shit. And then your darkest self is that nobody understands you or even wants to. They'd rather have you disappear. Well, you're not going to disappear. You're going to make life a living hell for them. You'll betray the wicked to the judges, the weak to the executioners. You'll pit humans and supernaturals against one another until everyone looks like monsters. Only seeing the pain that you're causing will let you escape your darkest self. Yeah, basically you just make a mess of everything because you're connected to all of these people who are actually powerful, and you're just someone who's like obsessed and fixated on them. And so Wipe Away the Debt recommends something about when you putting yourself in danger for a set of action, you get +1 die, but are in a worse position. Yeah, I like the idea of having a move where, and I think it fits really well into this one, of like encouraging the player to put themselves in bad situations so that other people have to save them, but then making it so that mechanically we reward that. And so it's beyond making a desperate roll, which is already rewarded. We want to go into like make the character put themselves in get themselves in over their heads. There we go. The idiom came back to me finally. And then have someone else come in and save you, and have our mechanics of this move make that be our like effective strategy, right? And like Transistor Radio is saying, right? Like, so the inversion that we're going for here, right, is that people constantly want to protect you or be kind to you, and then that builds power that all of you collectively can tap into, right? Because we want to do a total inversion of a lot of the ideas in Monster Hearts, which is all about like pitting these characters against each other, or having them form really like toxic codependence. Whereas in our game, we're using it's not so much interdependence but interreliance to create, bonds of friendship and have that be a powerful force that the team can use to do stuff, which is not that different from core Blades, which is the thing I really want to hammer on, right? Is that like Blades is about a group of people who need to like work effectively together despite their differences and all the problems they have and like their own inner demons, but they're always trying to like succeed at the stuff that they're doing, and then in their downtime they go and like piss it all away and each follow their downward spirals. But when the mission is happening, there is some tension between their own dark sides and them trying to accomplish the stuff, but they work better as a team. They have a bunch of moves around doing teamwork and are encouraged heavily to like do stuff together by the mechanics and because of the edges that gives them. And they still want to like do this thing together. So there is still that same spirit in this game, and then we're just playing around with some of the places where power comes from. Matthias Belger has an interesting idea here of when you suffer a consequence, instead of resisting, you can choose to describe how this sets up another character for +1 effect on their next action. Right? So the idea is being that we like tank a bunch of stress, or whatever, like we don't resist, so we take like harm or a bad thing happens, and we elect to, rather than say, yeah, cool, I'll just resist it and everything will be fine, I'll be a badass. It's like, no, this thing happens to me and it's bad, but that creates an opening for so-and-so. And so I both want to encourage, like people following through on your failures, which encourages you to try anyways, and then maybe sometimes you succeed, and maybe that's our fictional trigger or our mechanical trigger for Only Mortal, right? Because now this is all starting to form a complete body of mechanics that relate to each other, right? So we say, cool, like be the cheerleader, do a bunch of stuff, and then here's a little carrot for trying to do things that maybe you're not ready to do or shouldn't be trying to do. But then when you finally do succeed at one of those, then the game changes for you. I kind of like that. So when the character succeeds at some difficult / unlikely thing and saves the day. Equally valid to our previous one, and honestly not all that different, right? But we're starting to narrow in on maybe a more mechanical version of that same one, right? Because now we're connecting it to the difficulty of the task or the unlikeliness of the task. Something like that. Which we then have to get into definitions for, which is a little bit complicated, especially in Blades. Because even when you're rolling one die in Blades, there's a 50-50 chance that you will get what you were going after. Okay, but to come back to this, because I really like this idea of like a move where I kind of like eat a bunch of shit in order to set someone else up for something good. And then this move also interacts hilariously with the Guardian playbook, which doesn't have a lot of moves, but one of the moves it has is when you have special armor against consequences suffered in defense of or instead of your allies. You can also spend it to give +1 die to someone else's action. Okay, so this whole idea of like taking consequences for other people, right? And the Guardian unlikely hero combo is basically like all of Sailor Moon. So and we don't want to make them we don't want to make the unlikely hero. Sorry, I'm on the wrong playbook here. We don't want to make the unlikely hero just the like butt of every joke and total punching bag. We still want them. We want people to be emotionally invested in them, like one day breaking out of this awkward state. But they are still in this like awkward, half-baked status right now, where they're not a hero yet, but they will be later, and so that arc is satisfying if they spend some time fucking up and being useless at stuff. But I'm not sure how to ratify this move, this idea of like I take a consequence or do something foolish and then my friend bails me out. I didn't put out here. Right, this is what we want to reward. We want to reward me, the unlikely hero, going in and being like, I'm going to try to like fight the baddie anyways, and you go in, and then they're like, no, you're not ready, and then I'm about to get murdered by some giant laser beam, and then someone like comes in and blocks it, and they save my butt. And that, you know, we want that storyline to play out. So we need to make the mechanics push people towards doing those things. And we need to dangle little carrots in front of them to encourage them. But what does that really look like? By the way, this whole interplay, Madoka is like all about it for the first however many episodes. Because the titular character, Madoka, she does not take on the mantle of being a magical girl for a number of episodes. I can't remember exactly how many. She's just like following these people around and seeing them doing all this cool heroic shit. And she's in this state of like potential, and there's like a lot of tension around it. And you know, the other people need to save her, other people need to bail her out of these bad situations, and that's where a lot of the tension of the show initially comes from. And yeah, like being humiliated could be a big deal in this game, right? That could be level 2 or level 3 harm, as Matthias Belger is pointing out. So the kinds of consequences we take, this is very open. And I'm leery of making this a like something similar to what we did with the rival. I kind of want to keep that having like a logical distinction where it's like it's not like every playbook has like a certain someone that they have to name and then like have a bunch of interactions around, because I feel like that just gets irritating, and also like fragments the group. It breaks up what could be a web of interconnectedness to being these like this weird like connect the dots style relationship map where it's like I have this thing with them, and then they have this thing with someone else, and maybe that person has this thing with this other person, and then this one has a one-way connection with someone else. Blah. We want to avoid that kind of stuff. I'm feeling... Today I'm not like super on fire in terms of my brain's function, and so I am not... Nothing is springing to mind as being like, this is the cool thing we put in here. But I think this is a good like framework, right? This is the behavior we want to encourage. I'll figure out a move at some point to fill that space. I'm even feeling like I can eliminate some of this stuff in here. Like this move might not actually be very interesting. It might. Here we might be over rewarding a behavior that is already like very beneficial and over centralizing it on one person. It might create kind of the opposite of the like connect the dot thing where it's just like all relationships lead to this one person and no one bothers fucking hanging out with each other. They only want to hang out with this one person, which is boring in a completely different way. So I'm actually going to drop that one for now. I think I can come up with something a lot more interesting. But I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to gather info questions, and then we'll look at succumbing to darkness and XP triggers as an unlikely hero. So, yes, some kind of dark, edgy question. I'm going to take to bracketing out these things just so I can recognize them at a glance. And so each playbook is going to have different gather info questions that are, you know, things that are relevant to our goals as a playbook, right? Because each character is going to be looking for different things based on what their, you know, mechanics kind of permit. And so I like what Blades does of having each playbook have a different list of questions, whereas in Apocalypse World, it's like everyone shares the one list. I think this is a nice way to imbue some flavor into the various playbooks. And so for the Guardian, this is all about like protecting other people and things around fighting and stuff like that. So we have what is most dangerous here, who here is afraid, right? This is basically about like, who do I need to protect? What should I look out for? It's kind of a very general one. I like having a couple of really general questions, like what's really going on here is a good one. Who here is willing to do violence, right? Who do I need to protect people from? These two have a nice interplay. Also, who will my enemies try to single out? And this, this can be like in the lunchroom when we're dealing with all the mean girls, who are they going to pick on? This can be, which member of my crew is going to get fireballs launched at them by the big baddie that we're fighting, right? These are all applicable to a lot of situations, and I want folks to interpret them fairly broadly. So in a similar spirit for the Outsider, who's like our rival edgelord playbook, we have where's my rival and what are they doing? How can I gain an edge over my rival? What's the danger here that no one else sees? What's really going on here? And then some other kind of dark, edgy question. Right, the idea with the danger here that no one else sees, this is about how... this is essentially exemplifies us as being different from all the other characters in some fundamental way that we're able to look at this stuff. Siramira, no, not all the other playbooks are done. We've got the Guardian, like a bunch of them are in fairly playable states. I mean, there are some gaps broadly across all of them, but it's the first playtest package for this version of the game, so I don't need them to be complete exactly. So they're pretty much all kind of in a similar state. There's some blank space that is kind of more fundamental. Like, I don't know if I want to do some kind of equipment system or some other kind of things like that. But they all have some moves. They all have some gather info questions. They all have a darkness of the ones that I've completed, which is to say the Guardian and the Outsider. And now we're on the Unlikely Hero, where we have some moves. This is like, none of these moves are actually solid and playable yet, but we're getting there. And then we got to do gather info stuff, our darkness stuff, and then, XP triggers was the other one that I've done for the other two playbooks. And then in terms of overall progress, that puts us at... Sorry, let me consult my master document here. This one? Yeah, so of the total playbooks, we have Time Traveler, Enigmatic Hero, Unlikely Hero, Guardian, Fusion, Stranger, Outsider. So we're at the end of today. If I get Unlikely Hero to a good state, then we're missing 4, which is to say we're about halfway. So still quite a bit to go, but these don't necessarily take a ton of time. And if I actually sit down and grind them out, it doesn't take too much. So yeah, I think we want to... Let me just take a quick look again. So we've got a bunch of stuff relating to rival. What's the danger here that no one else sees? What's really going on here? I think the Unlikely Hero doesn't get what's really going on here. I think it's very important that they be a little bit clueless as far as that goes. I want to make a bunch that are kind of emotional, like along the lines of who here is feeling a certain way, and also like what is that person really feeling. We have what is most dangerous here in the Guardian. I might also put this in the this might be one that I want to copy over to the Unlikely Hero. They just want to know for different reasons. The Unlikely Hero kind of wants to insert themselves into danger, whereas the Guardian wants to like intercept that danger. The Unlikely Hero has some motivation to just like go and eat the danger in their face. So who here is feeling... I really like this one about who's scared that the Guardian playbook has as well. Who here is afraid? I just think it's such a nice gather info question. In that, like, the recontextualizing of it from Blades, because I think I basically took that one from Blades, or almost exactly that from Blades. But it's just like the complete... We want to know for the completely opposite reason, which I just really love. Because we're actually trying to help people in this game. And the tone is, like, miles away from Blades. What is your character really feeling? This is like a shoe-in for this character. We want to be able to like look at people and gauge their emotions. I say that, but we're also kind of naive. So maybe we don't even want this to be what is your character really feeling, but one that's more nested in conditions, one that's like, like, what are you feeling that would mean such and such to my character, right? Like, that I, as this innocent, weird character, might, perceive one thing that means another. In what ways am I naive and, like, missing some detail? But I don't want to forever lock the playbook in being incompetent, right? They just have like an early game where they are incompetent. And I think what is most interesting is to make them... So I've come full circle on this. I want to keep it as this. And I think what is most interesting is letting the character be able to see this stuff, but denying them the ability to act on it effectively, I think is actually really interesting, because that's how you make someone feel powerless. Right, as being like, you see a thing that you could maybe try to do, but it's probably not going to work. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? Yeah, just some like... although I kind of want one that's like, what is something nice I could do for this person? Who here... What are your character's unmet needs? So the idea being that we would just want to like directly help someone with something. Why is this doing a massive space? I guess because it's trying to do justified text instead of... Yeah, I just want that kind. Right, so this allows us to, if someone needs an ice cream cone, we will know. We can ask that. We can be attentive to the other player's characters. Which maybe is an idea that I need to include more in some of the other playbooks. And it's tricky with these kinds of things too, because we don't want to have our characters just be like telepathic, basically, right? Like, we want to keep it in a realm of like things that we could see and intuit. So unmet needs might have... I could see having a manifestation, but like how to solve that isn't necessarily something we get in this question. And like we can know what they're feeling, but not why. Who here is feeling blank? We could just have one that's just like, who here is feeling, and then we can insert an emotion. And so our character is able to... This character is just able to gauge like all the feelings. Whereas the Guardian only gets to have that narrow band because they're kind of more specialized in a way. At least as far as emotional stuff goes. They're more... Really, it's not specialized. It's like they're not looking for the same things that this character is. This character is very open and kind of innocent and just like takes in the stuff. So also keeping them kind of broad might be good for this. Um, what is most dangerous here feels maybe kind of specific. If we're going with that direction, we might want to edit this one to be more general. Um, we could do like who here is strong, and then who here is vulnerable. Strong or vulnerable. Could combine those into one as an exclusive or, so we get to ask either who here is strong or who here is vulnerable. Expressing that cleanly is a little bit tricky, but you know. Who or what here is also out of place. That's you just had to put also in there just to make this player feel bad. So we have what is your character really feeling, which is like about one specific person and getting like a bit more of a full picture, whereas saying like who here is feeling blank could be a way of like taking a survey more broadly of a larger group of people and just being like, oh, I'm in a room with like 30 people in it. Who here is feeling scared? Or who here is feeling... What else do we care to know? Who here is feeling happy? And we want to find happy people. Then we can see, oh yeah, these people are happy. Or who here is sad? And then, yes, that we might put who here is feeling strong. And that's a different thing than who here is strong. Like... Those are fun ways that people can manipulate these questions if they want. Because we can ask, who here is feeling strong? And then be like, who here is strong? And then we Venn diagram it. And if there's some people who aren't, you know, who aren't one or whatever of the other. Yeah, so I like having this one that's just about like being able to do a broad census of feelings within a group, and then having a more specific one, and just like having a lot of these be about feelings, or about like non-concrete, like tactile, physical things. I think is really great. I want to have one that's just like, what is beautiful here? Or something like that. This is a very impractical question, but I like it a lot as something to ask in a story game. Just be like, hey GM, hey, narrate some pretty stuff at me. Just ASMR me, GM. I want it. And then yeah, I feel like this is a playbook that I would love to play because, you know, there's Avery's metaphor of like, you know, driving your characters like stolen cars. I personally favor the metaphor of like, I am a kid in front of an anthill and I have a stick and the stick is my character and I want to fucking rile the anthill, right? Like, that's how I play story games. I'm just like, there's this big, old, tangled, complicated thing that I'm interested in, and let's just, like, put my character in there with no regard for their safety and just, like, see what happens. So that's where I come at it. But I really like the idea of having a bunch of, like, super soft moves like this one, or questions in here that are like completely impractical. I feel like that's actually really cool because there are ways to then make this information relevant, and this implies that in the game this is important, right? And then yeah, tell me how the anthill is beautiful. Right, and like, and since we have all these questions about like how are people feeling, and that's like, oh, maybe what we need to do is like point out how something is beautiful. And also it's like, as we are fighting the like massive, horrifying, tentacle monster that represents, my classmates' suicidal whatever, like, boom, we hit the GM with the where can I find beauty here, and then we all have to like reconsider what's going on in this through this lens. I just in general really love interrogating the fiction, and I feel like mostly the emphasis in story games is on action, and that's not always the most interesting part, or at least it is enriched by us asking these questions first and then acting. That is very much a feeling I have. So, yeah, like I want to have this character put forward. I want this character to be the one that's always like, no, we need to like talk to the thing, but then have that actually work or make sense or be plausible. Rather than just like, yeah, we got to fight it. We just got to kill it. We're going to shoot our fire lasers at it and it's going to die. And that's how we deal with all of our problems. I would like to have this character be given the tools to approach things in different ways. And that I like that we can, not always, but sometimes, like, redeem the baddies and, like, bring them over and make them friends. So, yeah, where can I find beauty here, I think, this is probably the best of these questions. I'm feeling less interested in this one. This one's kind of weird to me in this playbook. These ones about feelings are legit. What is most dangerous here is mostly a way of me as the player being able to ask the MC, how can I go stick my nose in it? And then this one is mostly about shaping people's conversation. Because, like, I could get at the answer to this question by asking this question. Because if the MC is just like, this person is hungry, that's what they're really feeling. They're feeling hungry. They could answer that. But I don't see that as being the answer that people will jump to, given my experience of playing. And so I put this question in here to say, hey, here's another way to think about people's emotional states or just people's behavior in general, right? I was saying, like, well, this is kind of like, why are they behaving the way they're behaving, right? Like, what is it that they need to get that they're not getting? And I think if people were taught to look at each other in this kind of way, like, this is something that I have seen in a lot of the like nonviolent communication and conflict resolution training and stuff that I have been through in my professional life. And this is actually like a really important question to ask, because this informs, like, this is all about like where someone is at in a way that this question should be, but that we are not trained to think in these terms. So I like including stuff like this to try to shape how people think about that stuff. And that in the context of, as Sierra Mira is saying, like having this idea of like, what is your darkest self? Having a question that's about the darkness inside people, this one leads us there as well. At least that's how I feel. I think I might trade this one out for something that is more like direct of like, I don't want to have this character ask what is your darkest self. I actually want to have the outsider ask that. So here's one of those situations where someone has put forward a suggestion in one context and I have to say, like, no, I don't agree with that for this, but that was like very helpful contribution to the discussion, and I think that actually that is great. It's just not great for the unlikely hero. It's perfect for this. What is your character's darkness? Inner darkness? What? how do I frame this? First of all, I want to make all this text smaller. It's not fitting here well, and it's not going down to single lines the way I want it to. What is the darkness inside your character? No, it's like I don't quite have a good. In what ways does your character embody the darkness? Carry darkness inside themselves? In what ways is your character? In what ways are your mind and soul vulnerable? Being a classic Apocalypse World question that I love. In what ways is your character tied to the darkness? That's what we'll do. And I think this is a good, like, this is a perfect, edgy question for our outsider playbook. You know, who's like, oh, well, I have been one of the baddies or whatever. You know, I have the darkness inside me. I am the edgelord, blah. But they can, like, see it in other people, and they see how other people are connected to it. Adro, this is it. Yes, Persona is secretly a magical girl. Like, I mean, it's not really, but it is, like, directly adjacent to magical girl fiction. I firmly believe that. And also, like, I think as the series has progressed, it has become more like that. Like, what I've seen of Persona 5 is much more like that than Persona 4 was. In terms of, like, now they're including, like, costume changes more explicitly, and, like, but yes, the two are very close together. And this game that I am making, although I really am, like, pushing the whole, like, it's a magical girl anime game, you can totally play Persona in it, right? Like, that's definitely a thing that you could use the game to do. Because those two are very closely related genre-wise. What darkness lies in your character's heart? Boom! That is it. That is the wording. What darkness lies in your character's heart? I'm stealing it, Transistor Radio. You put it on the internet, and I'm stealing it. Thank you. That is great. That feels a lot more clean than my previous wording. I mean, anyways, like, this at least is my perception. As someone who, like I watched Adam's whole Persona 4 playthrough, and I've watched a bunch of people, like, I've watched him play a bunch of Persona 5, and that's most of my experience with those games. So I'm not by any means being like, I am, you know, the foremost expert on Persona, nor am I the foremost expert on, like, magical girl anime either. But these are just, like, have been my takeaways, right? I'm not trying to make a, like, perfect genre thing. I'm just trying to make the thing that what I have seen of these genres has inspired me to make. And that's all. I'm making no claims to, like, having some deep understanding of the genres and stuff like that. Although I am doing my best to understand. And so Siramira asks an excellent question, which is how would the outsider use this? And I put it to you that for the outsider, and what's actually interesting here, right, is, like, this is the only question they have that is about another character that isn't super, like, perfunctory, right? Like, where is my rival and what are they doing? This has nothing to do with, like, how is my rival feeling? Why are they doing that? This is all just, like physically, where are they and what are they doing? Like, it's all very, like, mundane and physical. And then how can I gain an edge over my rival? This might go into emotional territory, but it's not strictly such. What's the danger here that no one else sees? This is a very practical consideration, and what's really going on here. might reveal some emotional information, but it doesn't explicitly contain that. This one is the only like expressly emotional question that the outsider gets, which I think is interesting because it means that their relationship with emotion is inherently biased towards them seeing negative emotion in people, right? And it doesn't predispose them to trusting people, right? It implies that they are suspicious and that they are looking for this in other people, and that they're not looking for anything else in other people, right? We have like antagonism and mistrust, basically, in terms of like how we would want to characterize these questions. And I think that's really cool, right? Whereas the Guardian playbook also doesn't really factor in a lot of emotional questions, but has a completely different vibe, right? The only emotional question we have is about who here is afraid. Um, and then we're talking about like practical considerations like danger and what I should look out for, and who are people going to pick on. Who here is willing to do violence and who here is afraid are the two that are the most about other people. And again, right, this is like, who do I need to protect and who do I need to protect them from, right? And then these other ones are much more practical. So I like the idea of framing the emotional context that people can get based on their playbook. And I like especially then that the unlikely hero has the broadest range of emotional questions and has like pretty much nothing for practical considerations. And yeah, like I'm totally keen to expand these questions too. So like maybe giving the rivals some more that are kind of like this one or that lead us in this direction. Totally open to it. For now, I'm going to keep the list a little bit small, and then I want to start small and expand rather than start big and try to cut down. At least with the questions, because I feel like the questions are an area where um, people will be happy to have more than they should, and I want to be very sparing in how much information I dole out. In the sense that I want the MC to be generous with information, but I want the types of information to be thematically connected to the playbooks. So if it gets too broad, then it means less and less the more questions there are. If we had to narrow this down to just like each playbook gets to ask one question, right? Like that question feels very significant. And that's like it becomes like the definitive thing. And if we consider that to be on a spectrum with every playbook having the same questions and there being a shitload of them, which has gone like way beyond where Apocalypse World is at into this area of just ask me anything, it doesn't matter, and like and you don't even roll dice for it, right? Like there's this whole range of stakes that we can put on this topic. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that in more detail, Matthias. I see your question or your comment of like, I feel like Blades and Hacks of It need a streamlined way to do gather info. What has been your experience with gathered info? Because I will talk about mine while the delay catches up and you get a chance to respond. But my experience of gather info was that when I was playing it, people didn't do it very much. Basically, it was like an untapped into part of the mechanics of Blades. When we went to season 2 of our Blades show on Elf's channel that I am now the GM of for season 2, in season 2 I was like looking at this, I'm like, oh, that's a thing? I didn't even really like clue into that being a thing. But then once I saw it, I was like, well, I'm gonna make them use this. I'm gonna like see how this works. And so my experience of it in season 2 is that people would want stuff from me and they would have specific questions, and I'd have to be like, hey, no, I can't tell you that. You have to gather info, and these are the questions you have access to. And then we would go through that. And the consequences of those moves let's see. One, at this point now it mostly happens in downtime. I've had it come up it came up in the warehouse job, and like Elf, more so than the other characters or other players, has used it a bunch because she is a whisperer and she's been doing a lot of like ask the Maelstrom style stuff of like trying to use the ghost field to like give her info. Um, and so in all of that, it's mostly a way of like clarifying and expanding the fictional space. And so it's a formalized dialogue between the players and the MC about the kinds of information that is important, um, and a way to like force both of us to have a conversation about like what is happening and about the context, which I think people are really quick to elide and skip, in a lot of role playing games that I have been in and seen, and like as the MC, I have made this mistake as well, and so I feel like it has been useful as a way to control the pace of the game and to allow more space for us to kind of expand rather than go forward, to expand laterally and be like, let's stay in this moment in our timeline. So here the timeline is going forward in me, depth in the screen, and so we're here. We're going to end up over here, but we want to expand this so that we see that we're not just in this like narrow linear tunnel. We're in this like broader fictional space. We can branch out, and it can create opportunities. The rewards for making the choice as a player to make that move are not necessarily mechanical, but they're fictional. Certainly, it broadens the fictional space that you have to work in, and gives you, and that can give you an edge later when you're like, well, I asked these questions, and so I know about this thing, and then I'm going to use that in a clever way, and then I'm going to look at the MC and be like, yo, can I get like an advantage die for this, or can I get better? I guess if it were a Burning Wheel, you'd be like, yo, can I get an advantage die? In Blades, the way that we would do that is say, look, maybe I have greater effect, or my position is more controlled, right? It's a way for you to lobby for better positioning. I entirely agree with your feedback, Sierra Mira, about how it's just like buried in the corner on the sheet in Blades, which is why I'm trying to move it to a position of somewhat more prominence on mine. It's right here under your actions. It's like a thing, and then there's your... I'm going to put something that I feel like darkness is great in the corner, both thematically, like, oh yeah, it's in the corner. It's kind of... we don't talk about that as a bad thing. But then also just like, there's going to be a time when you are fucking required to look here. So I don't need to have this be front and center. You can refer to it down here because the game is going to tell you when to do that. Whereas with Gather Info, it's kind of optional, and you kind of want to push it in people's faces so they think to do it more often. So there are my feelings. And now I am going to look at Matthias Belger's reply, because I just need to find it in the list here. Right, there's this like sideline conversation about other stuff. Okay, so in your Blades in the Dark game, it's always a bumpy part. It's also often a question if it should have position/effect or just be a question of how much detail can be gathered and no risk at all. Also, if I remember correctly, in Blades, I need to ask the questions first and then roll, and not like read a situation or person where on a good roll I get to ask more. Yeah, we might like highlight it with color or something as well. Like, these sheets are in very early stages. But yeah, I feel like you've had some like similar stumbling blocks around how this works. So I'm going to try to include a passage about Gather Info that says kind of what I just said about like what I want for it, and just be like, this is how I see this being like part of the game and what it's good for. Try doing it a lot and see what that does, because I feel like it's not as like sexy as some of the other stuff that people do in role playing games, but like this is actually where all the cool shit happens, right? And this allows you to have much more rich. This is like a setup action for your role play, right? This is something that benefits you on the player level much more than it benefits the character on the character level, because the character presumably already knows all this stuff. They're already living and breathing and seeing this world. They're in it. They're actually immersed. We as humans, we don't actually, as humans playing the game, we don't have immersion. Really, that's like a made up thing. We have information about the world of the game, and then we have stuff that exists in a state of potential. Like obviously, there's a cobblestone under each each footstep. We don't describe each one individually. We kind of do a lot of assuming that stuff is there, and until we introduce a question mark or a complication, we don't necessarily fill these spaces. But what that does is that leads us down a path of having a very limited scope to our story because we're riding a shitload of assumptions. And there's never an opportunity to derail us from that most obvious answer. But I feel like if we spend more time in this space of this like gather info type of gameplay, this allows us to have those moments that are like, oh yeah, we can use this thing, like aha, right? Like we can have that feeling of being clever because we have more pieces of a puzzle, or more like building blocks, really is probably a better way to look at these, like fictional building blocks with which to then build the next part of the story. And yeah, like I appreciate what Sierra Mira is saying about how in Apocalypse World these are much more front and center. They have like, they take up a full like page of the printed on legal trifold playbook type things, or the like moves handout. They're like a full section of it, and so that implies their importance in the like handouts, right? Which is, yeah, how you present the information is just as important as what's in the information, right? Like what you choose to emphasize and what you don't, or what you accidentally push to the background. All those things matter so much. So like I've been trying to think about those with my layout of these sheets, while also keeping it familiar to people who have played Blades, and keeping things in similar places. So, and like John Harper is an excellent designer, right? Like a graphic designer as well as a game designer. And so just like out of respect for the fact that I am a weebab and do not have the level of experience with this that he does, I'm trusting him to have made some intelligent decisions about how he laid stuff out. And I'm just kind of rolling with that to a certain extent as well. So this was a huge rant about just like the idea of this whole like gather information section in general. I feel like it's time to move on and actually get some other shit written down. Yeah, I definitely like. Clearly, that's something I have some feelings about. And so I would love to encourage players to like do more of that, and to encourage MCs to do more of that, and then that gives us, in my opinion, a richer conversation, which is all story games are, right? It's conversation. I mean, I'm not a super weeb, Transistor Radio. I have an appreciation for these things without necessarily being like full on weeb status. I'm not quite into it enough, I don't think. Yeah, there's definitely the question of like, oops, I'm messing up. Of like, yeah, are we trying to jam? Is this too dense? Is there too much shit going on? I think it looks really dense right now because there is nothing as effectively breaking up the space as if we go to award-winning tabletop RPG Blades in the Dark, and we look at John's character sheets, right? Like I'm completely mimicking his layout with some bits removed and shuffled around, but it's fairly dense, but the visual cues are nice enough to like separate things and give things space and like delineate. This gray fill does a lot to like bring emphasis to this area, right, to like make this stand out. Like, this is the important stuff. These are your special abilities. These are important. This is your equipment, right? These are the things that like are really definitive to your, right? Like, this is your playbook essentially. There's some weird parsing of the text here, but yeah, this whole section is like emphasized. And then we have like name, notes, and like this stuff is less immediate. Like, you don't look to this in the sense of like this is not prompting you necessarily in the same way. This is more like bookkeeping. Also, this is an area where we're writing in pencil, whereas this is an area where we're reading stuff, and the information is more set in stone, which means we can have this gray background here, because we're not going to be writing on it in gray pencil. It would affect legibility if this were otherwise. And then here we have all the things with pips, all the filling in of sections, and then more filling in areas where we're just ticking things off, and they're lists, right? These are all essentially lists on the right hand side. And then lastly, this list of questions. I really disagree with this choice. This is, I think, the one thing that stands out to me as being buried in the corner in a way that I don't like. I would love for this to be more prominent. I could see moving items that are key to our playbook into this position here above, moving all this down below, and then having our questions be over here somewhere. Something like that, or like, but we get into this whole like data Tetris situation of like, well, if this moves, then where does it go? And if this moves, where does it go? And what does that do to our whole layout? Like, there's a lot of tension between all the elements, and you want to balance all of that stuff. So I'm not just being like, John Harbour is bad. I'm just saying like, this feels like an unfortunate side effect of some other stuff, and I would love to be able to find a way to make this information more prominent, based on my own feelings about how important it is. I definitely like the trifolds as well, but there are some logistical limitations to the Apocalypse World trifolds. One, they're on legal paper, which is weird. Not everyone can print that, whereas this is on 8.5 by 11, which everyone has at their printer at home, right? This is the most common paper format in America, at the very least. So it's really straightforward in that sense. Everything's on one page, which is really nice. So it's just all in front of you all the time. You don't have to flip through things, flip things over, that kind of thing. Because you could transition this to a two-sided model, and put like more stuff in here or whatever. But it's nice that everything's just as it is. And I think like, as there's a difference between looking at these as like an aesthetic object and looking at them in this kind of more abstract way where we're filling in information now, and then like having it printed on a piece of paper in front of you, and like when it's actually in use and has a character on it, it changes as well. So like, as it becomes more of a tool and less of a thing, our relationship with the information on it will change. And with use, it changes as well, because then we start to discover the parts of it that we need to pay attention to the most and the least, and the usability of it becomes, there's like a conversation that exists between the user and the thing being used, where your engagement with it changes over the course of its use, which is a weird notion, but just like in the course of using it, how you use it is going to change, and how you see it will change as well. Design is hard, is what I'm trying to say, and I'm not good at it because I don't have a lot of practice at it or education around it. So I'm just fumbling through it and hoping that the people I am copying made good decisions that are kind of fundamental, and that I can see what those decisions were and why they worked and copy them. It's tricky. What do we want to award XP to the unlikely hero for? So, right, that we're continuing with our Blades model of addressing a challenge with blah. Um, but for this playbook, that's a little bit not quite what we want to do. Actually, like this character isn't directly engaging with stuff. Um, the Guardian had a bit about teamwork. They were the teamwork one, teamwork or self-sacrifice, which I think is a lovely pairing. I'm actually quite happy with that. Um, we have this one, which is like totally the opposite of independent action or aggression is what we address challenges with. Um, and so the unlikely hero needs to address challenges with compassion, I think, is a good one. And certainly that is in line with the tools that we are providing them with. And so, yeah, with like compassion and or empathy. I mean, to empathize is literally one of our skills, or actions rather. Empathize. So I don't necessarily want to use the word empathy because it's a little bit too on the nose. Um, but it's like, yeah, by having like compassion for people or like encouragement is the other one I want to put forward. Like this idea of being like the cheerleader, right? Um, Siramira, was it easy to use this playbook? Did you find things? Is definitely going to be on my like feedback form. That is definitely a question that I want the answer to. Right, like did the character sheets make sense? Did you feel that the things you needed to use were clear and could be found? Um, right, that's a super important question. Thoughtfulness feels too like premeditated and too calculated for this character, right? Like our starting stats are confess and forgive, which are just like, and we're all about the moe, the innocence purity kind of archetype. So this character is not, they feel before they think. um they are naive, they are like half baked, they're not quite done yet, um they're not mature, confident. They're not any of those things. So, how do they address problems? Right? They can have compassion, which I think covers the idea of empathy, which is definitely core, and that a lot of y'all have mentioned in chat. And then, we need this like other kind of complementary notion for that. And what I will do to get some inspiration is I will look at source material, right? So let's just go through the Blades character sheets and look at their things, right? So we have the Cutter, who does violence or coercion. We have the Hound, who does tracking or violence, right? So both of these guys have violence. The ordering of them is different, but violence is there. Leech, technical skill or mayhem. Love mayhem. Lurk, stealth or evasion. Slide with deception or influence. Calculation or conspiracy. See, these are the new edition, and I think we've been using the old ones in my Blades game, because prior to this it was calculation or preparation or calculation. But I love this word conspiracy. It's very evocative, and these kind of need to be evocative, right? Because these are telling you how to play the game, and if they're telling you to play the game in a boring way, then like we are setting expectations all wrong, right? And then lastly, we have the Whisper with knowledge or arcane power. And these are going to be way more edgelordy than our magical girl, XP triggers. And then for crews, it's all like job types, right? So they're not as helpful for this little exercise, but I think the interplay that is most notable, right, is this little tagline, right? A dangerous and intimidating fighter. And then what connects in here, because actually both of these words have a partner, right? Dangerous, right? Violence, intimidating, coercion, boom. A deadly sharpshooter and tracker, shooting, violence, tracker, tracking, right? There's like a clear core idea to the playbook. A saboteur and technician, technical, mayhem, right? Mayhem, sabotage go together, right? That basically they align with these two skills, right? Skirmish command, exactly this. So that you can never not make a cutter who can do these things that are going to get you XP. This is actually really informative looking at it this way, right? The Hound has hunt and survey. Hunt is a way that you do violence. Survey is a way that you track people. In this case, hunt is also a way that you track people. Technical skill, tinker, or mayhem, wreck, right? Like it actually just directly aligns with the skills you already have. Consort and sway, deception and influence. Consort, study, calculation or conspiracy, right? Study is calculation, conspiracy is the consort. Attune, study, boom. So easy. So easy. So now we just look and we say, compassion, yes, forgive, confess. What does confess do? Confess is how we clumsily reveal our inner emotional world to someone else. That's what confess is all about. So compassion covers our forgiveness thing, right? We're gonna be kind to people, which I think always requires some element of forgiveness. And certainly of all of these, maybe empathize is the other one that would be appropriate as a like starting skill for this class, but I like forgive. Confess, right? So that is how you're going to address challenges, is with these actions. Let's make sure that our other stuff lines up with that. Here we have perceive and express. And this gives us independent action or aggression. Maybe not. Maybe we're kind of drifting on this one. And then here we have teamwork or self-sacrifice. Teamwork is a little bit more open. It doesn't necessarily strictly have to do with a skill, but defy could fit that. And then self-sacrifice. I think self-sacrifice probably more likely is the defy one. And then we just have this one that I need to rename ARG, because I do not like endure. That is not legit. Still trying to rename this action. I don't know what it's going to be. But yeah, I can feel like I'm already drifting a little bit outside of the like nice, clear, and concise nature of Blades, where the identity and the actions align very, very closely, and that maybe I should try to align my things more closely. I'm not necessarily set on the address to challenge with blank and blank either. But that's kind of the core idea of it is fundamental to the game, I think, because given what we were just looking at, right, where we have this direct link between, right, and the cutter is the most obvious, right? We have an action, right? These are all actions that we do. And so then, like, why do we roll our actions, right? It is to do this, right? This is basically telling you the whole, like, mechanical loop of the game, right? Because you only roll when you're trying to overcome something, right? Which in the spirit of Blades is definitely address the challenge. We might reword this, but we're saying the same thing in a different way, I think, if we do, because this is the fundamental how the game works. You want to, there are things in your way, and you want to overcome them with your actions, with your, with these skills here. And what these skills let you do is these things. And it's very, very, very clear. Right? Like I can't imagine a way to still be a hack of Blades and break out of that general framework. Because we have to entirely change what rolling dice means at that point. Patience. See, okay, so here's the thing. So I don't like endure, which is what ARG used to be. This right here. Oops. My third Kudere stat. ARG now. I do not like Endure because Endure is basically you're gonna roll a resist roll every time to do anything to like endure a thing, right? I can't imagine a situation where I'm actively enduring something that isn't covered by me rolling a resist roll. And it's technically a verb, but it's an incredibly passive one. Like to endure, I can't really imagine what that looks like without someone else already having done something to me. And then that Blades already has a way of dealing with that, which is resist rolls, where we roll our, we roll one die per 1 point we have in each of the skills or the actions in a given category, and then boom, that's how we endure things in Blades. So it didn't make sense to have a stat an action for that separately, unless I wanted to totally change how resisting things worked. In which case, there's only one action for it. You just roll this particular action. In which case, like everyone is motivated to have it, and it gets weird. It fucks with this in a way that I don't find interesting. And then, so with a notion like patience is a quality that people have, but it's not an action. And I was watching a really good little chat between John Harper and someone, can't remember who. It might have just been him talking to his webcam, and to like a Twitch chat, but basically talking about that very thing, about like the design idea behind the actions, and how he used to have a skill or an action in the game called murder, which was just like you could just roll murder and murder stuff, but it was so it was too open and too unspecific, because there are so many ways to murder someone. It wasn't able to be nicely contained the way that the other ones are currently, and so it turned into like, now we have, for doing violence, we have hunt and skirmish are kind of the most obvious moves for doing violence, or actions for doing violence. And yeah, like tolerate, I don't know how I feel about that. And so like, and I think the way John summed it up was just like, sure, there's probably a game where murder is an action in it, and that's wonderful, but it's not Blades, because of how Blades needs to be, the granularity that Blades needs to have, in conclusion. So I feel like Endure doesn't quite have a place, and that I don't necessarily even want something that is like that. I was on the fence about Perceive initially, but I think Perceive is actually just super rad. Totally into Perceive now. But I need a third stat, or a third, I always want to call them stats, but a third action for this category, which already has Empathize and Investigate. And yeah, this one is supposed to be all the ones that are about like distance, and like characters who are like mature adults probably have more in here. Characters who are angsty, emotional teens have this one, and then characters who are wee babies have this one, right? So these ones all reflect innocence, because Confess is about having feelings and not necessarily understanding them very well, and very clumsily laying them out and just being like, blah, these are the feelings I have, without necessarily having a clear agenda. Forgive, right, is a very naive action to perform. And then Perceive is about seeing things. It's just about like letting the world come in through your eyes and just like seeing it, which is an incredibly naive act. Right? And so it's not about deducing or understanding things necessarily. It's just about seeing them as they are, which sometimes is very insightful and sometimes is totally wrong, because what they are on the surface and what they are on the inside is totally different sometimes. Moving on to the tsundere category, we have Express, which is about expressing yourself. So this can be a skill for like, this can be an action about like talking about things. So if I feel a certain way and I want to relay that to someone, I might do it with confess, in which case I'm doing it in the like clumsy way that lacks an agenda. But if I'm doing it with express, then I have like an angle that I'm working. Or I might, like dance beautifully or whatever. Actually, maybe dance beautifully is not good because that's actually really embody. And embody is about being like, it's about embodying an ideal. So like Sailor Venus is very embody heavy because she's like the idol. She's this perfect, beautiful, composed person. Someone who is graceful would have good ratings in here as well. Defy, this could be fighting directly, this could be shouting at someone, etc. But this is like the most directly antagonistic action. To defy someone could be to argue with them, could be to fight them, but it's the like antagonistic direct conflict kind of action. And like forgive might be used, you might have the same problem and solve it with either forgive or defy, and defy would be that I shout them down, and forgive would be that I'm like, oh yeah, we're having this conflict, but it's okay, we have beef, or you did a bad thing, I'm not going to beat you up, I'm just going to forgive you. Right, so we can use these in a lot of the same situations. And then we have empathize, which is about understanding people. So whereas perceive is about seeing them, empathize is about actually understanding them. Investigate is also similar to perceive, but whereas perceive is like, this is what's going on the surface. Investigate is the complete opposite. It's about what's happening underneath. It's about getting into the truths and details that are concealed. Silence, the opposite of arg. This is just an expression of how I feel about trying to fill this last spot. I just don't quite have the idea for it. And then to go over the categories more generally, right? Like Moe, innocence, purity, all of these I feel like align with that. This is the, like Madoka or Steven are totally in this category. The tsundere, everyone loves tsundere. A classic trope. Just these like very brash, domineering, big personalities all fit in there and all do these things, right? They might be horribly broken on the inside, but they're at least putting out all of these vibes. And then kudere is all about being really like veiled about stuff, having these feelings but not expressing them, or not maybe understanding them. Being able to like see people and understand them, or to see people and have feelings but not engage directly, work more subtly, work more calmly. Conceal might actually be the jam. I like that. I'm gonna put this in here for now. It's gonna live with a little question mark next to it, but this is an idea to let percolate. With the actions, I really need to like feel really good about them before I commit. But it's kind of in line with this. So that now we have a move for hiding. We have a thing for lying to people. We have a thing like this. If we want that in our game, this is a great place to put it. Certainly. Confess, express, conceal as a trichotomy. Zeke, I think that's actually neat too to point out, right? Like, because certainly I put confess and express, in that position deliberately, and I like that then this is how they play out. That's fun. And that we have perceive and investigate as counterpoints to one another, right? Like seeing things as they are, seeing things as they appear to be, seeing things as they are underneath, and that the tsundere category just doesn't even give a fuck because it's all about like stuff coming from the inside out. To come full circle now, so we have our character who has confess and forgive as their two primary things. We did compassion. Do we want to be addressing challenges with emotion? Is that enough? Compassion and feeling? Compassion and dialogue? Confess isn't necessarily an action that's about dialogue, though, right? Because it's very one-sided. It's about, these are my feelings, blah. Or this is this thing I saw, blah, right? It's about just like spilling the beans. And often, awkwardly, doesn't have a follow-up, right? There's no like next steps. People just get so worked up about confessing their feelings, and then they have no idea what to do afterwards. The fact that there is no good noun for being open is indicative of a problem with the English language and how the English language makes people think. You addressed a challenge with your words. Compassion or honesty. I kind of like honesty in there. Something like honesty or dialogue. Still, even though it doesn't quite line up, I feel like dialogue is still good. Earnestness. I mean, I would use honesty before earnestness just because of how awkward earnestness is to say, but I appreciate the sentiment of earnestness a great deal. I think we'll leave it as compassion and honesty. Compassion or honesty. Cool. Doesn't have to be perfect either. We can always revise later. Hey Stickmaster 3000, doing some tabletop RPG design, and we're just now getting into talking about the dark side of our unlikely hero playbook for this game. Gumption. Address the challenge with gumption. We're trying to move on, but we're still stuck on talking about XP triggers for it. Candor is a portmanteau at the very least. I think the English version of candor is spelt differently. It's like C-A-N-D-O-R-E. Or D-O-R. Candor. Pretty sure that's the word. And then, of course, yes, my mind was going there as well. Candor Hague. Whatever. RC is way cooler than Cantor. Get wrecked, Cantor. I fucking hope Adam's watching. I hope Adam knows that I think RC is cooler than Cantor. And yeah, anytime we're talking about darkness, I always want to refer back to Monster Hearts. And someone's mentioning the Ghost one, which I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the Ghost one coming into it. Ghoul. Ghost is before Ghoul. Darkest Self. You become invisible. No one can see you, feel you, or hear your voice. You can still affect inanimate objects, but this is your only avenue of communication. You escape your darkest self when someone acknowledges your presence and demonstrates how much they want you around. So maybe that last bit, right, of like how you break it, and that maybe it's about a feeling of worthlessness for the character. I mean, I don't want to contra Domini. I don't want to necessarily kick off a big Twitter clusterfuck by making my opinions about Cantor Hague and RC Keel known. I'm happy to just shitpost in my own channel here, basically. Yeah, I need to like get my hands on a copy of Masks and actually look through it, because I think there's some stuff that's going to be really good, and then also a bunch of stuff that I'm just going to completely ignore about Masks. But I watched some folks play it the other day on, I think it was on Blue Jay's channel, right? Or her and I Fly Dragons, aka Tom, and some other cool kids were doing a thing. Zeke, I don't know if I agree with your notion here about the darkest self for the ghost, which is what we were just reading. It doesn't take you out of play. It just means you have to communicate differently. I think it sets a challenge and a constraint on your play, but I've seen people do really fun stuff with the darkest self for the ghost. You just have to go like really deep into the whole like poltergeist thing, which I think is great. So I've seen people make it work. I've also seen it like be really sad and terrible. Yeah, like in the one shot of Monster Hearts that we did on the Roll20 channel, I feel like we had a pretty good run of that where it was Elf was the ghost, right? Yeah, and I think she did some cool shit. Um, and I tried to like keep pushing things in that direction and make the scene include her as the MC in order to be a fan of everyone's character. In order to like support the ghost who is in their darkest self, you have to box everyone else in with them and like force people to interact in a way, like not force exactly, but make a scene pregnant with the possibility of them interacting. Um, so I definitely like the idea of worthlessness / unworthiness for this character, which is kind of a reflection of a lot of the stuff that the outsider is feeling, right? Where they're with the outsider, it's like I'm tainted by the darkness and I am beyond saving, and the best thing that I can do is to like suicidally run my face into the bad stuff and try to kill it alone and spare everyone dealing with shit. With the Guardian, it's about how everyone else is worthless and terrible, and you spend all this time protecting them, but they're just not worth it. And how you have to like do things dramatically right now and like take leadership. All of the darkness things are about isolating the character. That's like the whole point. So that's why there is that common thread in all of them about like making this really selfish, twisted turn of what the character is all about. And so we have to think about like what the playbook implies that you value as a character, and then how you might not be living up to that, or in what way that becomes a poison pill for you. So yeah, this whole idea with this character, right, of their arc is about aspiring to be something more, and also having this like massive crushing weight of responsibility, because they are like this, because they're supposed to be a hero, right, and they're just not, because they haven't come of age yet or whatever. So this worthlessness and unworthiness, and then like soul crushing responsibility, right? Like in Steven Universe, Steven's knowledge that he is supposed to be one day at least like as awesome as Garnet and Pearl and Amethyst are, right? Like it fucks him up all the time. There's a lot to put on this little kid, right? He doesn't necessarily, he's not like emotionally ready for that burden, but he's already has to bear it just because he knows that one day he will, right? Like that, even the knowledge in advance of the impending of this thing is a burden of responsibility that he has to bear, and that makes him an interesting character because he is like this derpy kid also, and like waxes and wanes between being really aware of it and being serious about it and being totally oblivious to it, and has this like complicated relationship with it, which is very interesting. And that complicated relationship that he has with his powers, is an in for him with all these other characters who are very different from him, and that creates a lot of the magic of that show. And we want stuff like that in this game. Want people to have those feelings when they play this game. So Sunskimmer suggests this idea of having the character blame others for their problems and trying to like push the responsibility onto other people, which I think is a good one. Because I'm also carrying in my mind while we're talking about Steven, I'm also thinking like, okay, and in Madoka, that same mindfuckery is happening, where she's being told that she has all this potential and that she could do these great things, and like the other characters are being told that she has all this potential and could be really powerful, and there's this whole like pressure cell thing in Madoka, which is really messed up and amazing, where the one character is trying to get everyone to do this thing and trying to like leverage them against each other, Um, and the responsibility is being used in the opposite way. Instead of being this like burdensome thing, it's like, hey, you, like, the world needs you to do this. You should do this thing. Everyone wants you to do this. It's like being used as a pry bar to, like, get you to do stuff. It's pushing you around. And so in all of those cases, these characters have this very complicated relationship with, it's kind of like with their own potential, but their currently unrealized potential. And in Madoka, given the context, I feel like that has a lot to do with, like, society's expectations of you as a young woman, as a girl, what you will do. And that in that show we see Madoka's mother, who is this, like, really awesome, confident, like, hardworking businesswoman who's really successful. And there are lots of cute little scenes of Madoka and her mom hanging out and, like, relating. But then I feel like, my read on that all is to say, like, here's what you're trying to live up to, and what all this, like, magical girl shit is kind of, standing in place of, is this idea that, like, aren't you gonna be this, like, cool, successful person who's done it all, just like your mom? Aren't you gonna, like, live up to her, her image? And that her mother isn't aggressively shitty to her about that stuff, and isn't, like, trying to foist it on her. There are some subtle ways in which that activity goes on, where there's, like, the mother, like, teaching her stuff that relates to how her mother lives, and therefore is kind of like, oh yeah, follow in my shoes thing. But mostly her mom is, like, super chill about it, and, like, seems very wise and very, like, relaxed about it, and says reassuring things. So then we have this, like, one of the things I really like about the show is this kind of delightful, like, how good she has it, but then, like, still how shitty the emotional context of it can be. And we need to tap into that kind of stuff for this darkness profile. So yeah. When you are in Eclipse, is what I'm calling it. Yeah. So when you reach your stress maximum, you are in Eclipse. While in Eclipse, you do not roll resistance as normal. Anytime you take stress or harm while in Eclipse, you roll your lowest resistance. If a crit is rolled, you immediately recover 5 stress and go all super badass. I haven't quite finished defining that one mechanically. If the result is a 6, you hold on at the edge of darkness. So essentially, once you're at max stress, you just kind of sit there on the brink. And then on a 4 to 5, there's, like, a chance you can be saved, or you might just still succumb to darkness. And on a fail, on 1 to 3, you succumb to darkness. And then while you are in darkness, play into your darkness prompt. Instead of accumulating stress, you erase it from your sheet. When you reach 0 stress, your character succumbs completely to darkness. You can choose to either have your character die, disappear, or retire from the action, or they can become a champion of the darkness with the MC pulling the strings, make a new character. They join the crew after the current mission ends. Boom. So I've actually written a bunch of shit out on a Word doc, which I will flash in front of the screen to show you that it exists. And then my computer will do a bunch of stupid shit and ruin everything. Okay, so that is a quick outline of what this is all about. So this is the darkness prompt for this playbook. While they have succumbed to darkness, they need to do this stuff. They need to behave a certain way. And so right here is our stress tracker. You fill these in, boom, you're in Eclipse. You sit here. At some point, you're going to bomb that roll, or you're going to crit. And when you crit, you become a badass, a la Darkest Dungeon. But if not, you get it to be a real piece of shit, like in Darkest Dungeon. And so given that your stress now starts working backwards, that affects gameplay a lot. I think people can still help you, but it's going to change how it all works, and there might be some rules where it, like, causes them stress and stuff. I haven't fully fleshed all of that out yet, but you really want to avoid stress while you're in darkness, because that's like the ticking time bomb, and your character is just done. You have to retire your character. And I think probably it'll like cost extra stress for people to help you, stuff like that. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards right now. Which, like, this whole mechanic, I'm just really like plucking out of Darkest Dungeon. If you've ever played that game, has a very similar kind of vibe to it, where characters have a stress meter, and at the halfway mark they hit their breaking point, and they either snap and go all like masochistic or whatever. There are like a bunch of different modes that they can go into, but they're all terrible. Or they can have like an epiphany. They go all super heroic and they get a bonus. But the chance of them doing that is quite low. So in my game, that means rolling a crit on this particular roll. And then when they are in the like masochistic state, for example, they behave poorly. So they try to like move to the front of the order to like get hurt by things. They stress everyone else out. They're like this poisonous member of the team, but they're still fighting for the same objective. And I really, really loved all of that stuff. So I wanted to try to combine that with a kind of Darkest Self from Monster Hearts idea, mush them together. So Transistor Radio, this is how I'm trying to do it. Feel free to steal from me for your own hacks and mods. And so now we have this. So in that spirit, now we have this character. They're supposed to be a heroic person, but they're not there yet. They're struggling with feelings of worthlessness and unworthiness, and with this burden of responsibility. And we need to write a prompt. I will read out the prompts that I already have written. This one is for the outsider. You have seen too much of the darkness, and there is no hope for redemption. You are tainted by all that you know and all that you have done. You have to banish the darkness from the world now, alone, before others are tainted like you. You can only escape your darkest self. I keep writing Darkest Self. You can only escape the darkness when you see that your rival has their own demons they struggle with, and you two accomplish something together despite your differences. You must choose a new rival. Boom. So you have this like epiphany moment for the outsider with this character who you are a rival with. In the case of the Guardian, all the people you have sworn to protect are unworthy of that protection. You belong at the front, leading the fight. Wherever foes exist, you seek them out and confront them directly right now. You can only escape your darkest self when someone shows you how you are vulnerable and loves you despite your own weakness. Right? So in the case of the Guardian, it's about them feeling this obligation to protect people and the complicated emotional interaction that has, where you want to help people, but then saving people is hard work. It's thankless work sometimes, and they go through this whole like spiraling experience around it. And then they get that wake-up call, right, of when someone shows you how you are vulnerable and loves you despite your own weakness. So when you get to see how other people are working to protect you, right? And this is kind of like a emotional labor versus practical or like mundane, like physical labor vibe. Where it's like, yeah, you're doing all this fighting stuff, but you're not aware of the fact that like you're aggressive and dick to people, and they have to like make nice with you and try to be your friend despite all that, and like about flipping that shit on people. So in a similar spirit, we need to write this one. So we want to have a clause that's like a roleplay prompt, right? The way I've been formatting these is essentially there's like, here's how you play your character, and then here's the mechanical trigger for how you get the fuck out of this thing. And so the way that we want the unlikely hero to play their character, let's see here. So you aren't what they need you to be. You're weak, useless, unworthy of their trust. Gotta get an and in there for grammar purposes. So I feel like this one sentence kind of covers both these ideas right out the gate, which is nice. So right, so there's kind of a way to act or feel, right, like an emotional prompt for the character, and then like what are you going to do about it? These are kind of like burning wheel beliefs in a way as well. Trust and support, yeah, I can put that in there. You're weak, useless, unworthy of their trust and support. Right, like the unlikely hero is supposed to be this very innocent character. And so I feel like our way that we return, like, get out by recovering our innocence, right? Innocence, joy, joie de vivre, as they say. I wish this formatting would settle down. Right, because we want to put them with this darkness prompt, we want to totally invert the like happy-go-lucky vibes that we've been having before. And so we have this little like emotional cue, and then now we need a like thing that you do, right? For the outsider, it's you have to banish the darkness from the world now, alone, before others are tainted like you. The Guardian has wherever foes exist, you seek them out and confront them directly right now. And so for this character, right, what does us deciding that we aren't the hero mean? What do we do then? So the outsider decides that they're a lost soul, like they're doomed, and that the best thing they can do is like drag the darkness down into hell with them. So they like suicidally charge forward to fight stuff alone. The Guardian is like, fuck protecting things, I'm just gonna go smash stuff, and they kind of do a similar thing where they charge out alone. They try to like take stuff on. I feel like this character wants to hide, wants to like disappear, like they want to not do anything. Yeah, like everyone will be better off without you in their way. You need to get away, hide. I'm trying to think of like what's something active, right, that this person can do. Because like, yeah, running away, sure, but like, do you just find a hole to hide in and stay there? Like, it becomes kind of passive. Whereas the other ones are a destructive spiral. This one, if we just go away and hide, all we're doing is protecting ourselves. And so it needs to go to a worse place than just run away. I have a different thought. Though I think that one is totally legit for the character, I don't think it satisfies the goal of our design here of creating a destructive spiral for the character. I think what we actually want to say is that this character needs to become powerful, right? Like, that's what they really need. They want the shortcut to power. Because once they become powerful, then they'll be worthy of this trust and everything will be fine, right? Like, they just need to get some power. It doesn't matter where it's from. And they're maybe just stupid enough to think that the darkness will give them some. So we could run the whole angle of, like, you go and ask the baddies to give you some power. Or that you tap into powers that you shouldn't. right? Like, do we just dark side Jedi this motherfucker? You must open your player's handbook and become a warlock. I'm having trouble seeing how we could make that like an immediately actionable thing. I don't want to go dark Spider-Man scene either, Siramira. That's not where we're going. Because like this can happen, while you're fighting the baddies, and I don't want to have it just be like you change sides and fight with the baddies because that's ridiculous. Um, but an example of this that kind of jumps to mind is uh, there's a Steven Universe episode where Steven starts like working out, but like he doesn't actually work out. He just gets other people to work out, but he acts as like a coach. Um, and then Pearl has this great song about how she can show him how to be strong in a real way. Um, and it's like that's kind of what I'm thinking of, right? Is this idea of like you get some bullshit idea about how you're gonna become a cool hero that is totally wrong, and you don't listen to your friends anymore, and you go off and be an idiot. Um, if you're, whoops, where am I typing? What am I? Okay, here we go. If you're to become you'll never live up to their expectations once you become stronger. But then my question is, how do we turn this into a nice like short-term actionable thing, right? Because the other ones have great just like direct, like go fight the bad thing right now on your own. It's super easy. Um, wherever foes exist, you just like find them and punch them right in the face. Like take the most. Essentially, this prompt is just like take the most direct, obvious solution to everything all the time while you're in this state. Like just be direct and violent. And this one is like go off and do something stupid on your own. Easy peasy. I can always imagine those as a thing to go do. Whereas like just go be stronger doesn't quite work that way. Maybe our darkness, maybe I'm looking at this all wrong. Because we could make this more like the other ones and just have it be like you think that you are the hero and then you just go off and like fight. But again, I don't think having all of these just cue people being like a fucking torpedo into the darkness is actually good. I think it suits a couple of the playbooks, probably just those two, and then we're never doing that ever again. Um, but this needs to have some way of like sending this character into a destructive behavior. Um, and I just really, in as much as like going catatonic is kind of perfect for this character, I just really don't like it. Um, or maybe what I need to be looking at is a way to make that whole like inward spiral thing be interesting. Um, because it really does feel like the most appropriate. So yeah, okay. I don't have that last version saved, unfortunately, because I didn't hit the checkbox up there. But prior to this, we had so you aren't what they need you to be. You're weak, useless, unworthy of their trust and support. um, they would all be better off with you out of their way. Yeah, like it's beyond just like this. In return, you have to like lash out at them. Um, and actually, I like that because that also, again, to come back to like the idea that these are our actions, it aligns with that. We can confess. We can confess how we feel. Um, that's great. That's great. When we throw a little tantrum, it's fucking awesome. Um, but if they're so smart, why can't they see that? Right? Like here's our little chain of logic in little Steven Universe's head. Like, oh, I'm the worst. I'm so bad, but everyone's always so nice to me, and oh, it just makes me feel even worse. It would be so much better for them if I just wasn't around, because they're all so much better than me. But if they are so much better than me, then why aren't they making me better? Why can't they see that I am bad? Why don't they understand if they're so damn smart? And then that quickly turns into you just slagging them. Yeah, and just making them be like super pessimistic. Cynical might be too much of a stretch, but I definitely like the idea of just making them like abandon hope and become super jaded and shitty. Uh, so then what is our short-term actionable thing, right? We want to shit on everyone, but how do we express that, right? It's like you need to tell them right now. You give up the mantle, or sorry, you give up on your responsibilities. And you let them know that it's their fault. You'll never be the hero. They never should have tried to make you one. I will use my empathy to destroy them. Something kind of like this. I'm gonna workshop this one a little bit later. and then I'm gonna know how you're feeling, and it'll only make me feel worse when you're all disappointed. See, this is the thing, right? Like, all of these suddenly become really terrible when people have feelings about you and you just don't want them to, right? There's nothing more irritating. So we get out by recovering our innocence and our, sense of joy in life. So what is our return from darkness prompt going to look like, right? So you can escape the darkness when you see that your rival has their own demons they struggle with, and you two accomplish something together despite your differences. So some kind of like emotional realization and then a tangible action is what we have done for this one. And then similarly, escape the darkness. We need to change. When someone shows you, just a little bit of formatting stuff. When someone shows you how you are vulnerable and loves you despite your own weakness. So this is kind of like other people have to do stuff for this one. In this case, other people do still have to be involved. Always we want to have the other characters be involved in redeeming people. Yeah, who here is feeling awkward? Everyone but you. You're ruining it. Right? Like that would be terrible to see that and realize that. That's a really uncomfortable feeling. So all of their gather info questions are just hilariously set up to make them feel bad in the right circumstances. Yes, you can only escape the darkness when someone sings you a beautiful song. No, so you can only escape the darkness when so definitely there's some like they can't do it without me vibes, but I feel like I want to take this more in the direction of like it's not about like embracing responsibility as much as it's about like just being a like it's kind of about abandoning responsibility but in this more positive way, is where I want to push the character to be like, yeah, you were just getting too heavy about everything and like you just need to chill, and like it's totally fine, it's not a big deal, you're learning, it's okay to be fumbly and whatever, and like you'll get there eventually, and just like don't worry about it. Because yeah, like the whole I don't want to like drive the point home super hard. I want us to like bounce and end up in a different place too, right? It's not about resetting, it's about taking this plummet and like turning it around into this new revelation for the character. Um, yeah, Tim the Grim, I definitely like this thing you're putting forward, right? Of like when they acknowledge that they've expected too much of you and that you're like that you're cool just as you are, right? Like some acceptance, some self acceptance, um, but also acceptance from them. But also like this whole downward spiral can happen even if they were really accepting of you, right? And so transistor radio brings up an important point, right? Which is it's about having the other characters act as a catalyst for your own realization, right? So this notion of that they put forward of when someone else sees the beauty that you can't and shares it with you, right? Because like that aligns a lot with our other ones, right? Where it's about the other characters showing you stuff about themselves, and about like how friendship is what pulls you out of the darkness and other, you know, hippy dippy foofara feelings. Um, so we want to do something like that for this character, where the other characters need to kind of like forgive you of your responsibility. Um, and I think they also like kind of need to play into um, this whole line of reasoning, right? About how like it's their fault, because it kind of is. Like they are already there and you're not, and so like you genuinely do need support and are genuinely not ready. But you're being the whole idea with the unlikely hero is that you're being thrust into it anyways, um, and so people need to be like accommodating and nice and patient. But again, it may be that they already are doing that and that this fictional situation still comes up. So we need to get into principles that are like fundamental and agnostic to circumstance, right? So like your rival showing that they have their own demons they struggle with. This isn't saying like what am I trying to say here? it's like we aren't assuming that the people are behaving a certain way. It's just about giving a prompt of a thing that they can then do. Which I think maybe is something I've stumbled into with this prompt initially. Right, because we assume that there's lots of responsibility being foisted at this character, but that's maybe not actually the case. This implies that they certainly the most we are explicitly saying is that there is some internal expectation of like, I need to be this for them, and that they would all be better off those other way. And then here is where I start not liking it. Actually, I don't want this bit. I think this is bad. I don't think that I want to make that logical leap for the character. I think they can figure out how they want to be pissy about stuff. So I'm not happy with this. So I'm going to come back to it later, because this is where I feel like I'm going off track, because it's creating this whole like, it's not just about how you're feeling now, it's about like ascribing and projecting these things onto other people, which can be a bit of a stretch. I don't necessarily want to like wedge people into that kind of interaction. What would Madoka do? So yeah, like definitely I want to have... So, things we want here. We want someone else to do a thing, and then unlikely hero realizes blah. Right? These are the two clauses that we need to generate. So we want someone else to do a thing. What is that thing? We want them to... I think it's actually easier to do this one first. So what is our like emotional outcome for the character? So the character is like, I'm not ready, I feel shitty. I kind of want them to just like to be chill about it. To accept, like, I want them to accept themselves as they are. This is what I want for the hero to do. I want them to chill the fuck out about their whole like trajectory of like becoming a hero or whatever. They don't have to be ready. They can just still be a kid or whatever it is that they are. You know, they can be whatever it is that they are, because I don't know exactly if they're a kid or not or anything. That's not part of the playbook. And so someone else needs to do what? See, so here I think is where we can recapture some of the stuff I deleted from this, but in a good way, of putting it to the other characters to like acknowledge the pressure that they're putting the unlikely hero under. Even if they're not like really expressly doing it, but just to be like, hey, I can understand how you might have felt pressure from us, and like that's not what we wanted for you, and blah blah blah. So what the other people have to do is each know that it's kind of like, it's not forgive exactly, but like I guess they kind of need to like apologize or like acknowledge the difficulties / pressures the UH is experiencing. Yeah, it's like validate their experience, and that validation helps the unlikely hero character like feel okay about themselves. Because we want to push them to self-acceptance, and something that actually helps people feel accepting of themselves is having someone else be like, hey, I understand, and I can like see or relate to your experience, and then your experience feels real, and it feels okay to have it, and then you're like embracing it. So you can only escape the darkness when now how have I been phrasing this previously? So with this one it's specifically your rival, but this is just when someone shows you. Okay. Someone acknowledges your struggles and frustrations. See, but it's not, I don't just want this to be like, hey, I know it's hard for you in like a half-hearted way. Like it has to actually, it has to be more specific. Like I want to force someone else to actually give a shit about this person and understand what they're going through, and like specifically, not just in a like hand wavy like I feel so bad for you, whatever. I don't want sympathy. I want someone to like see what's going on and empathize and do something about it. Because again, these are all ways for me to like say things about human interaction. So so then how do we actually express that in language? That's always the difficult part. Yeah, basically make someone else use the unlikely hero's moves on them. So yeah, when someone engages you in dialogue about your problems and feelings, right? Because it's just like you just need to be heard after a certain point, right? And so we, like, what I like about this one is it's a two-part thing, right? It's like they show you something and then they do a thing. In this case, we're framing the thing that they do first. So when someone engages you in dialogue about your problems and feelings and shows you that it's okay to be you, to be normal, to not be a hero. I don't quite know how to word it. Yeah, people catching my typos. I make a lot of typos in this show, let me tell you. Yes, Contra Domini. Do RP feels scene to get rewards. That is entirely what this game is about, in case you haven't noticed. And actually, yeah, what a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games are about. I think, in my mind, the thing they are most about is intimacy. And that includes emotional intimacy. They're really good at that. So we want to engage them in dialogue about their problems and feelings. And shows you that it's okay to be blah. Yes, unlike Dungeons and Dragons, where the party likes each other because the DM said so, or often just the party doesn't make any sense as a collection of people. It's okay to be the victim sometimes? I don't know. It shows you that they have felt the same. Boom! Empathy! That's what we really want. We just want empathy. We want people to show that they understand what we're feeling. Also, little dig, felt, past tense. They're beyond that shit. They're cooler than you, but that's okay. Yeah, I mean, like, this is literally just a guide to talking with humans. People will stop being pissed off if you, like, talk to them about their problems and then, like, make a human connection with them. Yeah. And yeah, like, this is totally, like, imposter syndrome, right? Who hasn't felt that? Very common experience. But to me, this feels like a really obvious, just like, oh yeah, this is just how you talk to people. This is like how you effectively engage people. But I know that a lot of people do not get opportunities to develop this kind of skill. So I think it's really important to have role-playing games be a venue where we can highlight this kind of behavior as being productive, and like through the mechanics of the game, encourage it, reward it, structure around it. Jabba the Space Gangster, you can absolutely not have this happen. The second clause, this could just not happen in time, and then you fucking are done. It's over. So basically, when you fill all your stress, you go into what's called Eclipse, and then if you fail the like roll to hang on that precipice, eventually, so like if you filled up all of these, oh shit, there, wait, that doesn't work. Oh no, my visual example. We'll just put this on multiply. I'm going to a lot of effort to just fill in some circles. But okay, so say this is my pencil. And I'm like, yeah, I filled in all my stress. So now I'm in Eclipse because I'm in this last spot here. Every time I take stress from now on, I have to roll my lowest resist, which in this case with my stat line as it is now, which you would have more, but whatever, just as an example, would be 0. So I roll 2d6 and keep the lowest result. So boom, I roll them both. I somehow come away with a result of a 6 on those two dice. Like I roll 6 on both, but I'm rolling 0, so I count as having a single 6. Then it's cool, I'm fine. I just like take that extra stress, is no problem. However, I am no longer allowed to resist consequences, I think, while I'm in that state. What did I write in my rolls? Yeah, so you do not roll resistance that says normal. Anytime you take stress or harm while in Eclipse, roll your lowest resistance. If a crit is rolled, you immediately recover 5 stress and go all super badass. If you roll a 6, you hold on at the edge of darkness. On a 4 to 5 result, another member of the crew can push themselves to keep you from succumbing to darkness. If not, treat it as a fail. And on a 1 to 3, you succumb to darkness. And then when you're in darkness, you play into your darkness prompt, which is this thing here in the bottom right corner. Instead of accumulating stress, you erase it from your sheet. So if, say, I were to push myself on a roll to get an extra die, I'd be like, cool, I erase 2 stress. And I get to push myself. Right? Boom. So I get an extra die on a roll, and I resist a thing, and I take 2 stress, which means I erase 2 more. If, in the course of play, I never have a dialogue with someone about my problems and feelings, and they don't show me that they have felt the same, if eventually I erase all of my stress from this, then boom, that's it. The character retires, dies, becomes a champion of the darkness, in which case they hand their character over to the MC, but essentially, boom, that's it for your character. So that is how you... that is like one of the ways you can die. The other way you can die is by just taking level 4 harm, and then you're just fucking dead. But that, that's a whole other thing. Much more common that you would max out on stress, and then have to deal with being in darkness, because that's more interesting than characters dying. Death is, as I believe Adam has said in the past, one of the least interesting things that can happen to characters in role-playing games. And I'm inclined to agree. See you, Sierra Mira. Thanks for hanging out. So yeah. Feeling pretty good about all of this stuff on the sheet. Feeling pretty happy with where that's at. I like our gather info questions quite a bit for this playbook. I like the darkness prompt. I think it's pretty good. And yeah, compassion or honesty as being our ways of addressing challenges. Feels good. Right? Compassion for forgive, and then honesty for confess. Right? Because confess is about making a frank expression of our inner world and barfing it out. I need to do some more writing around the moves, the abilities, special abilities for the playbook. I have like the foundation laid for some stuff, but it's not clear how I want to do some of the mechanics of this like move that they always have, and then this one needs to be fleshed out. This one I like. Move number 5 I think is good. And then I like this caveat on the veteran advances that you only get access to them once you've completed the loop that only mortal represents. So, broad strokes, I'm really happy with the unlikely hero. I need to figure out the specifics of it, which is something I'm going to work on off screen. The next time I broadcast, I think we're going to be working on maybe the enigmatic hero, who's kind of the like tuxedo mask type of figure. So tune in probably on Monday if you want to check that out. And yeah, thank you all for checking out my stream. I'm trying to make a big push over the next like week or two to get all this shit wrapped up. I've been doing it off camera, but I've been actually writing like rules explanations for the game, which is a little bit dry. But I've been trying to do it. I've been making some progress on that. So the playtest package is essentially going to be that, which is going to be on like one page, a little like GM sheet, the crew playbook, which I'm pretty happy with at this point. I mean, it's really sparse at the moment, but that's fine. It's, you know, it's got as much as it needs for now for a first playtest. And then having a starter point for all the playbooks. That's the goal. So, you know, not having all their moves done, I'm not even going to worry about Transcendence yet. I got to write the rules for that at some point. And then maybe I'll fill in some of these, but I can also just leave them blank for now. And then that's going to be the playtest package. Any of y'all tuning in, you're more than welcome to get that once I finish it. I just really want people who are playtesting to actually send me notes, or ideally do recordings, streaming, whatever, of their games. And so, yeah, I really don't want people to just like take this and start playing it and never give me any feedback. This is totally useless to me. So please, 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 if you are planning to playtest, just be ready to take notes and send them to me, or to, you know, record audio of your session and send it to me, or whatever. But the more information I get, the better, and the better I can make the game. So yeah, thank you very much. You can follow me here on Twitch, which helps me because hopefully I will get associate whatever status, affiliate status soon. But I can't imagine that more activity on my channel will hurt my chances of getting that. And then you can also support me on Patreon. All of that stuff is linked by way of my Twitter. I'm going to be posting the VODs for all of this to YouTube tonight. I'm going to do all the paperwork for that. And my YouTube channel can be found through my Twitter profile as well. So if you want to check those out, there's all of the previous sessions on there. And certainly by tomorrow it'll have everything up to today. I think I'm missing like 2 or 3 from my VODs as it stands now. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.